Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects. Could barely even wait to get to the intro before making a mistake. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan page that'll have plot synopsis and character bio. So, we're continuing Todd McFarlane's run in The Amazing Spider-Man. I have already covered every issue from 314 on up, including his Spider-Man run, and decided to go back. So I've got also covered 298, 299, 300, and 301. So give those a look. I do have a Todd McFarlane playlist. So we're going to be looking at Amazing Spider-Man 302 from 1988, drawn by Todd McFarlane and written by David some people say McFarlane, I say Michelini. It doesn't matter. So, McFarlane drew this issue. This is his second issue inking. He did he was mostly a penciler. I am also covering his Incredible Hulk run, which predated this. So, where we left off, we now have Peter in Kansas. Huge trope from McFarlane in which he does a close-up of the face. One of the other things that's really cool about McFarlane are these ticks. And so they are recruiting Peter to move to Kansas. And so great panel here. POV from that gentleman showing him the stuff. McFarlane not skimping on the details. I have covered his later Spider-Man run. I've also covered his issues of he did a limited series with DC. I think it's called Invasion. I have those also on the McFarlane playlist. I'm covering his Hulk run. I'm going to get to his Infinity Inc. run. And then, unfortunately, that's so much as he really did. I've got his, also his Batman Year 2 run. He did the three of the four issues. Alan Davis did the first one. And after that, I guess it's just the early Spawn issues. Because this man quits drawing, goes just into the inking, because he wants to, head his little his toy empire. Which, by the way, I'm a capitalist. I understand, make money where you can, but I'm also greedy, and I really want him drawing. It is, to me, it's the reason I follow him. So, all right. So we got this dude here. His name is Martin Jacoby, and he's basically showing Peter the ropes of all that they're doing there and how much they would love to have him. I love cartoony McFarlane. This guy changed the world. This is the building where they all work. And Jacoby's kind of telling him all about the job, and these two are fighting. He's doing construction. This guy's like, hey, these machines are messing with my experiments, and he's telling him, we gotta, it's hard to put up a building with some destruction. And he's like, find a way or I'll have you fired. And this guy's like, fire this. And so he tells him, this is Wes Cassidy here. He's, you only introduce the names because they're going to be in the story. So, it's a trope on comic books. Don't bring something into it unless you're going to use it. So, he's the best construction boss in the state, but this guy here is Royce Nero, and he was with the government. He's new to the private sector, and he is volatile. Here you have a badoom, and great job showing the shaking. And so this guy's telling him that there's a fire, basically. There's gas bottles are stored, and so he's like, get everybody out. They have an emergency. Everybody evacuates. Peter says, this looks like this is a job for the fire department. But since they're not around, and you can see him pulling a Superman here, which I think is just awesome. This is early. This isn't quite. You can see here he's figuring out the webbing. Um, and he'll get to it, and you can even see he has. You're not used to that round head. He eventually does get to it, but and so then all of a sudden he sees all these um I think explosions. And he's like, what the heck? And he can see someone running, and it's that Wes Cassidy, and he obviously has superpowers, and he's grabbing the insulation, throwing it in there, and he's like, well, I hope somebody hasn't spotted me. And then they both see each other, and they leave. They're like, uh-oh. And so, and he tell him this is an isolated, he's like, event. He's like, I understand that accidents can happen anywhere. And so then he's like, what about Mr. Super Guy here? So here's Dr. Nero again. We knew that something was going to happen here, and he's created some kind of glove thing here. He's got a rock and was managing to destroy it. McFarlane is so good. It's so sad to see him no longer drawing. And he's like, I'm almost ready now. So back in New York, we got Silver Sable. She was the one we had on issue 301. Again, with the vertical panels. This is going to be a trope of McFarlane, a vertical panel with buildings. Greg Capullo even continues it in the Spawn run. So this with the buildings and this here all the time. So McFarlane basically spends this time kind of setting everything up so that he doesn't have to, show it again. So she was working out. They brought one of her wounded, what are they called? Not the frat pack, but the wild pack. I don't know. And she says they found Franz Cross, but the organization is bigger, more dangerous than they could have imagined. And so she says, I'm going to have to enlist a special operative. And he's like, cough, cough. And she's like, dismiss, kind of disregarding him. So we are now got this nice little suburban home. Now, keep in mind that this is Kansas. I've been in Kansas. I live in Nebraska. People, there are no hills in Kansas. I don't care where you're at. There is no hills. It is flat, 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 flat. So McFarlane just imagined some hills, but there are no hills. So his family's playing football, and love the commentary, like, hey, Alf's coming in, and you can see the Elmer Fudd shirt, and then realizes Spider-Man is watching him. And he's like, how the heck did you know I was here? Because it's the second time. And he goes, well, it's a long story. I love this. This just did not happen. If you look at comic books during this time, People did not draw like Todd McFarlane. People did not draw like Jim Lee. Jim Lee is John Byrne on steroids. He basically took what he learned from John Byrne and Neil Adams and all these things and just exploded. But Jim Lee's a different cat. Todd McFarlane, this with the ticks, it just didn't happen. People kind of did the inking. You just didn't see people just do the this, and it just caused difference. I mean, you look at it now and you're like, well, everybody draws like this. No, not back then. They didn't. Now they do. Again, putting frigging. This is not Kansas. I'm telling you, I've been to Kansas. This is not Kansas. So he's like, I want to hear then that story. And so again, working on the webbing. I don't know where the heck he's attached to because it's Kansas and it just doesn't work. But all right, so he's gonna go and tell him his story, and he's saying, how he was a foreman. Essentially, there was a jackrabbit that apparently he got Spider-Man's powers, but from a rabbit. It's just this dude deserves his own series. I don't know how they never. I don't know much, but I don't think they ever brought this dude back. But they really should because he's Spider-Man, but with a rabbit, and so he's been trying to keep that hidden. So he's like, is there anything you can do to help me? Sorry, I wish I could. Well, he says he felt better getting things off his chest. Love the inking. Again, people did not do this. People didn't draw like him. And it's funny when you see how his evolution will happen. So, all right. And we got the Sandman who went, again, a vertical panel establishing where we're at. Does the thing with the trees here. Very cool. The Sandman got locked. He's using his sand powers to let himself in. And there's a silver sable. And she says she has a business proposition. Another really cool thing is this is when he's a good guy. Was his face turn. But of course, he goes kind of back to being a villain. And so this here is a little bit of photocopy and then kind of inking in the background with a card, with drawing and all that stuff. So there's Mary Jane, very fashionist, saying how much he loves it in Kansas, and she's like, okay, and she's like, oh man, because she wants to stay in New York because that's where her life is. So, and so we are back to Kansas. I like how comic books these things just move from bit to bit to bit. And so he hears a knock on the door, and it's Nero, and he's wearing like this suit, and he's got that glove on. And he's like, what's going on? And he's like, collecting dues. Spent 20 years with the government developing riot control equipment, but I was retired when they decided my inventions were too extreme, too fatal. So I decided to make my brilliance pay. I used my time here to turn defensive devices into offensive ones. Now I'm going to take my first payment, the priceless plans for the secret projects in your safe. So, because people can't just be good. So, Peter's being taken in, and there's there's an emergency, and so he gets out because Spider-Man's gonna be needed, and they're like, "What the heck are you doing in Kansas?" And he's like, "I'm on a world tour," and so the guy shoots at Spider-Man with his glove. He misses, and Spidey manages to get him. Again, McFarlane kind of figuring out the webbing, grabs him, tosses him through, goes through the wall. That's very, very good panel. Uses some kind of liquid thing to imprison this guy, and it solidifies this here. It's harder than steel. So, uh, Spider-Man punches him, and this guy grabs something here, and using some kind of sonar, I would imagine. And Spider-Man's falling. This guy knows he can help him, but he doesn't want people to know he's got superpowers, and he just can't. And Spider-Man eventually beats him on his own. He says, "I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it." Spider-Man says he knows he might have done the same thing if he'd been born in his shoes. We do what we have to, all of us, and then we live with it, as he walks away. So they arrest this guy. He says that, they, how come Spider-Man was there, and Spider-Man's like, he's been spotted in England, Germany recently. Maybe there's a whole squad of them running around. So he says, I hope this hasn't soured your impression of them. He's like, you kidding me? I love it here. And so when he gets back to New York, he tells Mary Jane how much he absolutely loved this, and how much fun he had. And she tells him, New York's her home. Her friends are there. Her career is too. She doesn't know if she can give that up, even to make a dream come true. So we end the issue with a what now? So this concludes our issue here. So Amazing Spider-Man 302 by David Michelini, the writer, and Todd McFarlane, the artist. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening. Goodbye.